Ed Holland's going to be speaking today on the topic of mental health. This is such an important conversation for pastors to have. It's not just a challenge or an issue in the pew, but pastors and ministry leaders all across our country are having to deal with mental health issues themselves. Ed has pastored many churches across the country from size in the 50s up to several thousand, including Akron Baptist Temple in Akron, Ohio. He's also worked with John Maxwell in his leadership and his stewardship. And in 2022, he founded Envision Solutions with a burden to help pastors. Listen close as he talks about mental health.
If the last 50 years of ministry have taught me anything, I've learned that those who serve in ministry approach the finish line of service in life either filled with bitterness or their hearts are filled with an awareness of the goodness and blessings of God. Now, here's the big challenge. Serving people is messy. Sometimes the sheep gnaw on the shepherd. And yes, there are always a few wolves in the sheep's clothing mixed into the flock, and wolves do what wolves do. Our calling, our physical and mental health require us to make peace with the certainty of spiritual warfare and the intensity of physical and emotional demands that are placed on us in ministry. We must have a plan to stay spiritually and physically healthy when the world, the flesh, and the devil takes aim at us, and they certainly will. So today I want to share with you 3 thoughts that will allow you to overshadow the burdens that life and ministry throw at you with an awareness of the blessings that God gives you. Here's number 1. My mental health, my health in general is sound when I do what I do for the right reason. September 11th, 2001. I was in the Atlanta airport, waiting to get on a plane, headed to New York City. Like everyone else, my plans were changed that day. It was a few days later that the makeup date for that trip provided me with a few moments that have shaped my view of the importance of ministry for the right reason. I had been invited by Peter Scazzaro of New Life Church in Queens, New York, to help prepare the church for a giant leap of faith. You might know of Peter as best-selling author, known for the work he's done relating to spiritual and mental health in the church. The book, Healthy Church, has helped thousands build sustainable spiritual foundations in their lives that empower ministry and provide a foundation for sound physical and mental health. The church at the time was only 14 years old. They were meeting in the historic Elks building on Queens Avenue. They were hopeful they could make this strategically located historical building their permanent home. When the flights resumed, the first conversation that took place with Peter was on the rooftop of the Elks building. You could see the smoke rising from the rubble of the 9/11 terrorist attack. The church had done what the church is supposed to do. They poured themselves into the needs of the victims, of the families the terrorists had injured. They were literally working 24 hours a day on site. I stood there on the rooftop wanting to do something, to say something, to help, to lighten the load of this pastor. And I said, would you like to hit the pause button and delay our efforts in the church to unite the church around this desire we have to move forward and facilitate future ministry through this facility? With a voice that was emotionally exhausted, that reflected the physical fatigue of the moment, Peter answered me and said, no, we can't fail to press forward. Our community, the world, needs us now more than it has ever needed us before. And so we press forward. As unique as that moment was, I have heard the same weight of spiritual burden from countless other pastors over the years who are bearing the weight of the mission. We all feel this weight, this burden. Our wives, our families have been pressed down by the weight and realities of life and the spiritual burdens of ministry. A few years later, as the dust had settled from 9/11, leaders of the church, together with Peter, recognized something had to give. The 9/11 pace could not be sustained. There was an overwhelming toll on the committed, and it was not sustainable. And so they put their thoughts together, taking timeless principles from the Word of God. And from this emerged the book, The Emotionally Healthy Church, and then later, The Emotionally Healthy Leader. There's a statement that emerged from this work that goes like this: emotional health and spiritual maturity are inseparable. I believe this is only possible when we do the right thing for the right reason. And the right reason is really very simple. If Jesus is the reason for the season at Christmas, certainly Jesus is the right reason to do what we do. This is the only way to keep the main thing, our relationship with Christ. This has to become the strong foundation of a strong emotional and mental and physical and spiritual health. And so my question now is, do we do what we do for the right reason? Number two, right priorities. The right priorities help us to establish clear and reasonable pecking orders for the things we do. Here's what it looks like for me. Christ first, my relationship with Him. Second, my physical and emotional health. Third, my family. The truth is they often get the leftovers. Then comes number four, the ministry God has called me to. Prioritizing the Great Commission and evangelism and discipleship will keep you on track with the mission. But no one who serves escapes the criticism of those who feel they know better than you how to regulate your time and schedule. If you don't prioritize what is important in your life, others will do it for you. No one serves unscathed. I love the story of the 19th century pastor Charles Spurgeon, who was asked why he did not buy the cheapest ticket when he traveled. A critic went so far as to brag, saying, "I travel third class." Spurgeon responded by saying, "I'm saving not money, but I'm saving the Lord's servant." Spiritual and physical practices that lead to sound mental health must be intentional. We must prioritize our personal well-being and our family. There will be no rewards in heaven for sacrificing our physical health, our mental health, and for destroying our families on the altar of service. And so first is the right reason. Second is establishing the right priorities. Third, healthy pastors establish the right habits. Habits are disciplines that protect us. The sound mental health of a spiritual leader is not a simple subject. There are organic issues that have to be considered. Each of us have a different hard wiring. Each of us run at a different pace. But we all need to train. We all need to have the right kind of habits that allow us to run the race over the long haul. The right habits will prepare you for whatever comes. And again, if I could use the example that Paul used when talking about being prepared for the race of life, Paul said that he had trained as an athlete trains to build discipline. He said, "I discipline my body like an athlete training to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified." None of us want to be disqualified. But we all know people who have been unable to finish their courses. They were disqualified. We all need to establish habits. We all need to train to reach our spiritual potential. We don't know what the race course before us looks like, and we just need to be ready. And the only way to do that is to train. I can tell you firsthand what it feels like to run a race and not be ready. My brother Dan and I ran the Boston Marathon for the first time in 1993, and although we had done other races, we had no clue how difficult Boston was because the first half of the race is all downhill. The second half is almost all uphill. One problem, we had trained in Florida. No hills to train on. Because we had agreed to finish together, Dan prodded me to run faster when we were going downhill. And toward the end of the race, I prodded him as we went uphill. About a mile from the finish line, Dan got a surge of adrenaline. He decided to compel me to run faster. And he kept saying, "Ed, run faster, faster." To which I did not respond. Finally, he prodded me some more, and I ended up blurting out, "Dan, I am sprinting right now. This is all you're going to get." And I think there's a profound thought there. 2, 1, run with a brother. It'll keep you in the race. And 2, none of us run the same pace, and none of us run within the context of what God's called us to do with the same style or ability. We all, however, are able to replace the hardness of the race with the joy that lies before us. And we will be able to say with Paul, as he said in 1 Timothy 4:7, "I have fought a good fight. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith. Finally, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day. And not to me only also, but to all who have loved his appearing."